Ash stuck to the soles of her boots. A fine gray layer, drifting like the last breath of something that didn't go quietly. Maeve Rios adjusted the filtration mask over her nose and stepped over the body of a half-melted mech drone, its chassis still twitching in the wind. The wind wasn't real, just a pressure leak from the shattered northern dome, whistling through the bones of Outpost 7. She liked the sound. It reminded her of Earth, of mornings that didn't smell like burnt copper and sterilizer. Her shift began before the sun lamp cycle. 7 years now, always the same. Sanitation detail, lymph drain, and floor scrub. No weapons, no words, just quiet compliance. That was the arrangement. Time to sing for the cameras, muttered Tessa Vaughn beside her, tightening her scarf and adjusting the false smile she wore like war paint. Her voice held the scrape of someone who used to scream into microphones. Orbital pilot, once. Frontline media darling. Now she sorted ration slips and recited cultural compliance mantras in 3 alien dialects. Maeve didn't answer. Words were expensive. She saved them for when they could cut. They passed under the retina scanner arch. Kurzek was already there, flanked by 2 black-armored Zalathai enforcers. 12 feet tall, bone-colored plating, no eyes. They didn't need them. Maeve felt their gaze crawl over her skin anyway. Proceed, the field commander ordered, voice like a glacier folding. His translator clipped every syllable. Initiate harmony display. Harmony display. A parade. A performance. A lie. Music chirped through ancient speakers, cracked earth chords. Children, lined in rows, held flags that no longer meant anything. Human women in borrowed garments, flowy, soft, unthreatening, danced slow motions beneath alien banners stitched in brutal symmetry. This was what the Empire broadcast back to the core worlds. Proof that humanity had adapted, that they were no longer volatile, that they had learned their place in the order of things. Maeve held her mop like a crutch. Watched. Waited. Then the boy tripped. Small, maybe 7. Pale skin, wild hair, holding too tightly to a flagpole twice his size. He fell forward into the path of a Zalathai soldier's march. Not deliberate. Not treason. Just clumsy, just human. The enforcer halted, tilted its head, and picked the child up by the arm, casually like lifting trash. The scream was small. Just a whimper, really, but it cut through the speakers, sliced through the forced cheer. Tessa froze mid-step, her eyes locked with Maeve's. No, whispered Maeve, not to stop her, but because she knew what was about to happen, what she herself was about to allow. The soldier's grip tightened. Tessa moved first. A flash of motion, 1 step, 2. Then the sound of metal on exosuit. A cracked knee plate. The child dropped. Back away, Kurzek barked. Now. Maeve let the mop fall, picked up the flagpole, snapped it across her knee. The splintered end gleamed like a knife. She didn't scream when she drove it into the soldier's exposed neck joint. She didn't need to. Panic surged. Children ran. Drones activated. Alarms. Flashes. But the humans didn't scatter. They swarmed. No weapons. Just hands. Just teeth. Just years of swallowed rage and folded pain. Sanitation buckets became bludgeons. Wiring from rusted panels turned to garrotes. Blood, blue and red, slicked the concrete. The Zalathai didn't expect it. They were optimized for large-scale warfare, not proximity madness. Not this. Maeve found herself on the floor, shoulder torn, her pulse in her teeth. She laughed, wet, involuntary. Above her, Tessa stood on a broken speaker tower, holding the child in one arm, a stolen plasma cutter in the other. Her shirt was soaked. Her braid had come undone. Her voice carried, ragged and furious. We're done performing. Kurzek aimed a gauntlet. Fired. The beam missed. Hit a banner behind her. Flames bloomed, orange and angry. The fire caught the others, silk-soaked in polish and false promise. And soon, the harmony display became a pyre. Maeve crawled to her knees. The scent of burning polymer mixed with sweat and old ozone. Around her, women were screaming, but it wasn't panic. It was song. A song with no melody. Just rhythm. Just a beat of feet on metal. Of fists on bone. of voices that had tasted dirt and stood back up anyway. Kurzek tried to run. He didn't make it far. The enforcers lay twitching, systems fried. One tried to speak, voice skipping like a corrupted file. This does not comply with projection models. No, of course it didn't, because their models were made of equations. Not grief. Maeve stood. Smoke curled up into the half-collapsed dome, carrying embers into the purple sky. Someone painted something on a wall using a broken brush and blood. We're not nice. She felt her hands trembling. Not from fear, from relief. It hadn't been planned. It hadn't needed to be. For 73 years, they had played along. Curtsied, smiled, folded their edges in. And then, in the space of a single breath, that mask had cracked. No leaders, no orders, just one scream, and the understanding that rippled through every woman like lightning through water. No more. Maeve turned to Tessa. Her friend nodded, eyes wet but steady. Around them, more women gathered, engineers, teachers, cooks, janitors, covered in soot and resolve. They weren't soldiers. Not yet. But the Empire had made the same mistake all tyrants eventually did. It had assumed compliance was consent. And now, the stars would learn the cost of waking the ones who had been quiet too long. Because somewhere in the Empire's database, under threat profiles, the note beside human females still read, low risk, passive, cooperative. Maeve wiped the blood from her face, straightened her shoulders, and looked up as the fire reached the central tower. No one ever asked what happens when we stop being nice, she whispered. And somewhere, deep in the burning dark, the galaxy finally realized. They should have. Rain fell in slow arcs across the ruins of Sarah, 7, acid-washed, humming faintly as it kissed the metal bones of a city that no longer bowed. In the dark below, deep beneath what used to be a reactor bay, Maeve Rios stitched a man's chest closed with wire stripped from a drone's comms array. No anesthesia, no light, save for the glow stick clamped between her teeth. Breathe, she said, voice low but sharp. Don't scream. It's not the worst thing you've felt. Not today. The man whimpered once, then bit down on a belt. Tessa crouched nearby, eyes scanning the broken monitors for motion. Her knuckles were raw. She hadn't slept in 3 days. Didn't matter. Sleep was a thing for people not being hunted. Their scout drones are cycling pattern scans, she muttered. But they're slowing down. What? Maeve didn't look up. They're confused, said a voice from the shadows. They're trying to find a leader. Hex stepped into the dim light, her short hair wild, her coat stitched together from old banners and burned sleeves. 16, a savant with machines. Her sister's mind, but wired for chaos. There is no leader, Maeve said. Exactly. Across the colonies, the fires had spread. Not with coordination, with instinct. Women like Maeve and Tessa hadn't called for revolt. They simply acted, and others followed. Not because of orders, but because something inside them had already cracked years ago, silently. The Empire's response had been swift, tactical, brutal. Drone swarms, atmospheric destabilizers, neural disrupt fields that made entire populations forget their own names. But something in the model had failed. The resistors remembered each other. The human nodes were scattered, unconnected. But still, the same phrases kept surfacing, painted on walls, whispered in checkpoints, etched into drone wreckage with broken fingernails. We're done being nice. This is our kindness. Now burn. In the dark recesses of an Empire battleship orbiting the edge of the contested zone, Dr. Vanel Yix recorded a field note. Subject profile update. Human females, particularly post-reproductive age cohorts, exhibit nonlinear leadership traits. Behavioral spikes include irrational risk-taking, high emotional contagion, and unpredictable cultural improvisation. Their rebellion lacks doctrine. It is not military. It is personal. Conclusion: this is not a movement. This is memory weaponized. Back in the tunnels, Maeve's patient passed out. She tied off the final stitch and wiped her hands on her trousers, leaving twin streaks of red across the seams. More reports from Epsilon 3, Hex said, her fingers flying across a stolen interface. Their nursery pods went silent. Rumor is someone hijacked the caretaker AI and started broadcasting Earth lullabies on loop. The drones shut themselves down. They couldn't handle it. Tessa laughed, a raw, bitter sound. Didn't need bombs. Just a damn song. Maeve stood and stretched her shoulders. Every joint ached. Her skin had grown tougher in the past weeks. Thicker, rougher. But her heart, that stayed soft. She hated that. The softness was what made her dangerous. People are asking for instructions, Hex said. What do we tell them? Tell them the truth, Maeve answered. That we're not here to win. Tessa looked over. The hell does that mean? We're not building an empire, Maeve said. We're breaking one. That's different. She walked to the edge of the tunnel mouth. Rain dripped off the edge of her coat. The sky above flickered with distant fire. Somewhere up there, a flagship burned. And someone was watching. Dr. Yix watched. From the shattered bridge of an observation vessel, Yix reviewed the footage on loop. Women fighting with tools. With broken glass. With poems. One had strangled an officer with a braid of her own hair. There is no predictive structure, he logged. They do not obey chain of command, nor cultural directive. Their threat does not scale with technology. It scales with grief. Yix paused the footage. A still image showed a woman clutching a wounded child in one hand and a torch in the other, backlit by fire. Eyes wild, face streaked with ash. I believe we miscalculated the psychological architecture of the species. We believed the females would be more docile. We mistook endurance for consent. We misread their silence as surrender. He closed the file, sat for a long moment, listening to the hum of emergency power. And somewhere beneath the orbiting wreckage, Maeve emerged into open air, boots crunching over glass and bone. Around her, others rose from tunnels and vents, scars gleaming like metals. Word had come in, Zeros V. The Empire's communications relay hub. Locked tight. Thought impenetrable. Tessa squinted through the mist. That's suicide. It's necessary, Maeve replied. Hex's voice buzzed over the comms. They've got gravity, shear, cannons stationed across the lattice. You'll be vapor before you breach. Only if they see us coming. Maeve touched the side of her neck, where an old scar curved like a crescent moon. She remembered the day they took her sisters. Not in blood, sisters of the heart. Nurses, poets, fighters without titles. She'd been the one who survived. That had never sat right with her. This isn't about taking Zeros V, she said. It's about making them bleed for it. Tessa cracked her knuckles. Now you're speaking my language. Somewhere in the silence between lightning strikes, a signal sparked across the neural band. A song, just a hum at first, a melody from a war that never made the books. Women across the colonies picked it up, hummed it as they wired explosives, as they baked ration bread, as they buried their dead. It wasn't an anthem. It was a warning. Maeve looked up. The stars shimmered behind the smoke. We don't have plans, she said. What do we have? Tessa asked. Maeve smiled, slow and terrible. We have a memory. And in the heart of an empire that had cataloged every threat, quantified every terror, and prepared for every possibility. They never saw that coming. The sky above Zeros V didn't crack. It peeled. Like the lid of a pressure can pride open too fast. What came through wasn't a fleet, wasn't a declaration. It was one dropped ship, rusted and unregistered, falling too fast and burning too bright. A comet of defiance. Inside, 32 women packed shoulder to shoulder, no armor, no shields, and just enough ammunition to be considered a bad joke. Maeve Rios stood at the front, fingers wrapped tight around a stolen grav rifle that jammed every third shot. She didn't care. She wasn't aiming to live through this. Below, the orbital ring shone like a noose. 6 defense lattices for interceptor squadrons. Enough firepower to atomize a rebel fleet. But no fleet came. Just them. We make noise, Maeve said, voice like gravel, soaked in whiskey and grief. We buy time. Behind her, Tessa strapped herself to a bulkhead with a length of cable. No seat. No parachute. Her eyes gleamed. She'd finally found a fight that made sense. Hell of a way to die, she muttered. We've done worse, Maeve answered. The hull buckled. Reentry alarms howled. Hex's voice crackled through the comms from a hidden uplink station on the far moon. They locked all external gates. No signal in, no signal out. You'll have 90 seconds once you breach. Plenty, Maeve said. She wasn't lying. They hit the outer paneling at terminal speed. The dropship's hull shredded like tissue against the first layer of Zero's V's defense ring. But the core, hand-forged by a colony mechanic who died with a smile, punched through. When the smoke cleared, Maeve stood on a floor of polished obsidian, breathing fire. Alarms shrieked. AI turrets tracked motion, but faltered. One by one, they jammed, glitched, collapsed under feedback. Somewhere, Hex was laughing. The defenders weren't soldiers. They were functionaries, officers, people who had never bled before. The first fell to Tessa's cutter, split from clavicle to console. The second tried to run. The third begged. Maeve moved like a ghost through the corridors, her team following close. They didn't call themselves warriors. They didn't need to. They were mothers, daughters, survivors. The kinds of women who got things done while the world looked elsewhere. Each hallway lit with fire. Each checkpoint they passed was marked with a single glyph, carved deep into the wall with whatever tool was closest. A flower, the old Earth symbol for remembrance. Security protocols failed to contain them. Protocols have been written for armies, not for this. Not for women who had already buried their dead. Not for a medic who had held a child as the Empire gas-choked a hospital wing, who remembered the color of lungs collapsing. Not for a pilot who once sang lullabies through gunfire to calm a shuttle full of refugees. Not for women who didn't fight for power or vengeance or glory. They fought because they remembered, and memory doesn't retreat. They reached the core relay with 20 seconds left. A dome of crystal and code, humming with the secrets of half a galaxy. This was the nerve center, the mouth of the Empire. Maeve placed the last charge against the central column. Looked at Tessa, at the others. All bruised, all tired, all standing tall. Any last words? Tessa asked. Maeve touched the detonator. Her hand shook, not from fear, from peace. I hope they remember why. A hiss, then gunfire. Real this time. Zalathai commandos, late to the dance. One round hit Tessa in the side. She stumbled, coughed blood, smiled anyway. Go, she growled. No, Maeve said. We finish this. She helped Tessa to the panel. Together, they activated the override. The detonation wasn't nuclear, wasn't flashy. It was elegant. A data bomb. A worm that Hex had written on a stolen school tablet, buried inside a forgotten Earth nursery rhyme. When it launched, it didn't kill. It reminded. It turned every communications relay into a mirror. Every atrocity, every scream, every erased memory, every sterilized village, every child taken for re-education, every time a woman had been told to calm down. The Empire's core systems broadcast it all, in every language, on every channel. The galaxy watched. Some vomited, some wept, some picked up weapons, and some, in places long pacified, began to hum. Dr. Vanel Yix watched from the fractured bridge of his retreating vessel. His report lay unfinished. There were no more words for this. He watched the footage as Maeve and Tessa, shoulder to shoulder, faded in firelight. No rank, no title, just choice. And as the screen turned to static, he whispered what would become the most repeated phrase in the archives of 3 civilizations. They weren't the strongest. They weren't the smartest. They were just the last ones willing to stand. Days later, in a crater where the relay once stood, a child found something half buried in ash. A scarf singed at one end. She wrapped it around her shoulders and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Empire still counted losses. But here they told stories. Stories of women who didn't ask permission. Of a defiance so pure, so quietly monstrous, it cracked the heavens. Not a revolution, a memory. It would not fade.